who gives. May you bless them abundantly in every way. God, we thank you for not just meeting their needs, but may they walk in abundance over, above, and beyond so they can continue to be a blessing, God, to so many. We thank you for all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. So I don't know about you, but I often think of the great white shark as one of the scariest creatures in the ocean. Anybody with me? You kind of think of like the great white shark, like that's a super scary. Right, well, one of the most well-known movies of all time, right, featured a great white shark, Jaws. I'm sure we've all heard of the movie Jaws. And the Discovery Channel, they have this summer special called Shark Week. How many of you have heard of Shark Week before? Shark Week? Yeah, so it's like this week-long focus documentary on sharks, and they talk about different kinds of sharks and their feeding and what they do. Then it's kind of like the climax of Shark Week is talking about the great white shark, right? This like apex predator. For like 7 days, they talk about this. It's probably coming up pretty soon. I have no idea when that is. But all those things, they kind of just play on our fears about these incredible predators in the ocean. And a number of years ago, my family and I, we took a trip up through the northeast. And we ended up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, as a part of that trip. And we decided to go to one of the beaches while we were there. There's some beautiful, beautiful beaches there. And when we got out, we started to walk on this beach. And what we noticed, there were warning signs all over the place. Warning signs all along this beach. And the warning signs had a picture of great white sharks on them. So this is like on the beach, warning, great white sharks, to let people know that these beaches, all right, have the active presence of great white sharks in that region. Can I just tell you, that is one way to keep people out of the water. Right? Because we saw those signs. I did not get in beyond my ankles. You know, I had to like just touch the water because it'd say, hey, I've been in the water there. But I didn't get in beyond my ankles. I'm like, great white shark, warning signs all over the place. I don't think so. Okay? Now, as powerful as those creatures are, there's another predator that's even more powerful than great white sharks. So earlier this month, a great white shark washed up on the shore of South Africa. This great white shark was 15 feet long. That's huge, right? Massive. And it was mangled. It had been killed. Its body was split open. There were teeth marks along the side of its head as well. So you could tell it had been in a fight. It had been attacked. And inside of the shark's stomach, they said was a freshly consumed dolphin over 6 feet long. So get this. Okay, the 6-foot dolphin had been consumed by a 15-foot great white shark. Okay, and then the great white shark, this 15-foot great white shark, had been mangled by a bigger and a more powerful predator called the killer whale. Anybody ever heard of a killer whale before? Now, the great white shark is big. The great white shark is powerful. But there's another predator that's even bigger and more powerful than the great white shark, and that is the orca, the killer whale. And that's what took down the great white shark. Now think about that. That's actually a picture of something that I want to talk about today, this idea. This idea that, as we relate it to our subject today, the temptations, the tests, and the trials that we face, they're big, okay? But God is bigger. God is bigger. These things, they seem so strong in our lives that we feel like we have no hope against them. We feel like there's no hope. We often think the apex predator, like the great white shark. At least maybe that's what our mind tells us sometimes, or we feel like that's what we experience in life. But we need to remember that just like the great white shark, there's something bigger and more powerful out there that can take down the temptations and the trials and the tests that we face. This is part of the series called Warning. And the Bible gives us warnings to prevent us from falling into unnecessary traps and pitfalls in life. And so we need to pay attention to those warnings, since it gives us warnings, because these warnings can prevent us from being sidetracked. They can prevent us from being destroyed. It's that serious. And so we're continuing through the book of 1 Corinthians, just going along our journey. So today it brings us to 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 12 and 13. And it says this, it says, if you think you are standing strong, be careful. There's the warning, right? Be careful. Warning, be careful that you don't fall. The temptations in your life are no different from what others experience, and God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, He will show you a way out so that you can endure. So the Apostle Paul, who is writing to the church in Corinth, he's telling them that there are some temptations that pull them in different directions. So in the Greek word for temptations, it actually means temptations, tests, and trials. Okay, it means all those things that we face in life. So it includes temptations, that word does, but it also means a whole lot more than that. And just like the Corinthians, we're also pulled in different directions by these same type of things. So we can say that the temptations, the trials, and the tests we face in life are big, but God is actually bigger. So today we're going to look at how to navigate temptations, trials, and tests that come our way. And I believe this is going to be so relevant to your life. So the first way we can navigate the temptations, the tests, and trials that come our way. Number one, don't be overconfident. So don't be overconfident. Verse 12, Paul says, if you think you're standing strong, be careful not to fall. So the Corinthians thought they could practice all of their freedoms that we unpacked over the past several weeks. We've gone through that. If you didn't get a chance to listen to that, you can go back on YouTube, our YouTube channel. You can watch those messages. You can go on our website as well. But they thought they could practice all their freedoms without any harm that would come to them. I mean, they thought, hey, we're free. We can just do whatever. But Paul warns them about this overconfidence, okay? And there's a couple of different areas of overconfidence that we need to be aware of here. One is overconfidence and selfish living. See, they thought they could live however they wanted to without any consequence for their behaviors. And they thought that their sins and their disobedience, their compromise, and all their actions outside of God's plan, they thought it would never catch up to them. But Paul says, I'm warning you. That's not true. He said, it will catch up to you. You're not nearly as secure as what you think. And you see, this is a danger for us as well. We can be allowing certain sin and certain compromise in our life, and we can end up getting this false confidence, and we think it's no big deal because we haven't yet experienced any consequences from living that way. Okay? But just because we haven't felt the sting or the results of the consequences, it doesn't mean that we're immune from it, and it doesn't mean that we're standing strong or in a secure place in our lives. In fact, Paul says this, be careful. He said, be careful if you're living just how you want to live without regard to God's word and in disobedience for what He's really asking us to do when it comes to your choices and your actions and your attitudes and your motives and your relationships and your business decisions and you could go on and on and on. He said, because just because you feel like you're secure doesn't mean that you are. In fact, you're actually standing in a very dangerous place because you're standing outside of the covering of God. And that's a false sense of security. We think we're secure, but we're really not. So there was this overconfidence and selfish living that they had a problem with. The other area of overconfidence is overconfidence in themselves. They felt like they had this unusual spiritual security based on their knowledge and their spiritual experiences. So they felt like they were spiritually strong. They felt like they were spiritually knowledgeable enough to get into some theological debate with Paul. And they were so sure of themselves and their spirituality that it began to turn into this ironic pride about their level of faith. Kind of crazy. But that pride wasn't really based in God. That pride was based in the way they wanted to live and the way they were exercising what they thought was their faith, which was really more about them than it was about God. So they had this overconfidence in themselves, or they had this self-confidence instead of God-confidence. And that too is a very dangerous place to be. Paul says, I'm warning you. You're not nearly as secure as you think you are. So for all of us who are placing a confidence, maybe in our years of faith or the journey that we've walked with God, the long journey that maybe we've had, or our moral way of living, or our perceived level of spirituality, or with the way we're living our faith on a daily basis, or the miracles that maybe we've seen, or the miracles we've experienced, or the ministry that we've done, or our position in the church, or our involvement in the church, or maybe we think we're doing great compared to somebody else. You see, all of that is really overconfidence in ourselves. That's all it is. It's overconfidence in ourselves. And you're not really as secure as what you think you are. That's what Paul says. Reminds me of how almost 2 years ago, I was going on a 50-mile bike ride same week, just several days before Ryan and Lydia were going to get married. That's my oldest son and my daughter-in-law. And I had ridden this trail so many times. I was an experienced road cyclist with literally thousands of miles of riding. Thousands. I did strong endurance rides all the time like this. I was in great shape. It was no big deal. It really wasn't. Some people are like, 50 miles? That's crazy. But for me, I did that all the time. So I was in super shape, ready for this ride. Didn't even think twice about it. How am I going on a 50-mile bike ride? And I was riding with some overconfidence that day. I thought I was secure. And as a result, I started to ride a bit sloppy. I took my eyes off the pavement in front of me just for a few seconds. And I lost a little riding discipline in the moment. And when I did, there was a stone on the trail, about that big. I didn't see it. And I hit it. I was going fast, really fast. And when I hit it, it jarred my hands loose from the handlebars, just shot my bike and me off the side of the trail into rocks, and I pinballed off a tree or two. Boom, boom. It all happened so fast. Ended up with my bike on top of me. And along with the bruises and blood that come with something like that, I was all scraped up. Blood was running down my leg and had it all over me, and just trying to figure out what was going on. The worst out of all that was that I fractured my shoulder and I fractured my knee. My right shoulder and my right knee. Some of you who are here, you remember this, and I'm right-handed and I'm right-legged, and which is not good. Yeah, it was a bad situation there. So I had to have surgery. Took a couple different surgical procedures on my shoulder. They went in. It was worse than what they thought. They had to do a couple different types of things, and they put an anchor in there, and they had to rewire this. And I'm just using my own terminology because I don't know exactly what you call it, but all this to repair it. And then we put the picture up there. That's when I came home from the hospital. So I just had my surgery. I was still kind of out of it there. And I just arrived home. That's a picture. You can see the braces that I'm in. And I couldn't move my shoulder or bend my knee for 2 entire months after the surgery as part of the healing process, because it had to all heal. And then I spent many more months in rehabilitation, especially with my shoulder. When I was doing rehab, it was frozen shoulder, wasn't operating properly, and they thought they were going to have to do another procedure on it. So there was just this massive ordeal that I was just trying to go through to try to get back to normal. It was tough. It was a hard time. But you see, all this happened, really, the point I'm making is when we become overconfident, that's when we're in the most dangerous place. Okay, because we let our guard down. Those who are most liable to stumble and fall are those who think they won't. Does that describe you? So Paul is writing here to say, you're not nearly as secure as you think you are. You're not nearly as secure as you think you are. So don't be overconfident in yourself or the way that you're living. That's a warning from Paul. Remember, it's God who is bigger than the temptations and the trials and the tests that we face, not us who is bigger. So the first way we navigate temptations, trials, and tests is not to be overconfident. Okay, the second way we can navigate temptations, trials, and tests that come our way. Number 2, know you're not alone. Know you're not alone. Verse 13, first part of that verse, it says the temptations in your life are no different from what others experience. They're no different from what others experience. You see, everyone experiences temptations, trials, and tests. You are not the only one. These things are all a part of the human experience. It's the imperfect world that we live in. You know, whether you've just recently come to know Jesus, or maybe you're not yet a follower of Jesus, you could become one today, or maybe you've been following Jesus for decades. You know, every follower of Jesus or every person on the planet experiences temptations and trials and tests. See, just because you give your life to Jesus, it doesn't mean you won't experience those things. See, I know that some people feel like they are less spiritual because they experience temptations that are pulling them in this way, that are pulling them in that way. See, you need to know today, you are not alone. Okay? If you are a human living on the face of the earth, okay, you will experience trials, temptations, and tests of your faith. You just will. This does not make you bad, doesn't make you evil, doesn't make you a second-class Christian. No, not at all. In fact, let me say that temptations actually are not sin. It's giving into the temptations that's a sin. Being tempted is not sin. So God wants to set some of you free today from this idea that you're sinful because of the temptations that you experience. Or the idea maybe that you're a second-class Christian because of the temptations that you face. So I just want to encourage you, stop believing those lies of the enemy, because the enemy is trying to tear you down with those thoughts. Leave the guilt behind. Let go of that shame. Release the unnecessary burden that you've been carrying from your shoulders. It's not God putting that on you. You know, everyone experiences temptations, and that's not a sin. It's what you do with the temptations that matter. Okay? Now, you might have heard this quote from Martin Luther. Here's what he said. He said, "You cannot keep birds from flying over your head, but you can keep them from building a nest in your hair." You can't keep birds from flying over your head, but you can keep them from building a nest in your hair. So I thought I'd bring with me here today a little example of this. Okay? So I have a little bird, small. I don't know if you can see this. It's a red bird. Okay? We have the bird, and we have the nest to try to help us understand this concept, okay? So the birds are like the temptations that come our way, all right? They're going to fly over us all the time. They're going to fly over your head. Somebody said, sometimes flocks of them will fly over your head, all right? The nest is when we act on the temptation or the sin. The bird's a temptation, but the nest is when we act on it. We settle it down. We let it build that nest in our head, so to speak, all right? But just because the birds fly over us, okay, doesn't mean we have to allow them to build a nest on our head. You get that, right? In other words, we don't have to act on the temptation. We don't have to act on the sin when it flies over us. We don't have to act on it when it comes our way. Here's some examples. So when you're tempted to give somebody the unfriendly finger when they cut you off in traffic, or the bird, literally. Some of you got that. When you're tempted to do that, okay, you can choose not to act on that, and instead you can say a prayer for that person. How many of you know that would be better? Okay? You can pray for that person. Or when you're tempted to lie and get out of something, that's a temptation, okay? You can choose not to lie, and instead you can choose to tell the truth, believing that God will have your back even if you're speaking what's true and it's difficult. Okay? When you're tempted, the bird flies over. You're tempted to take a peek at pornography. Instead of acting on that, right, the nest, you choose instead to open up your Bible to Romans chapter 6 and you read out loud where you are dead to sin but alive to God in Christ Jesus. Yeah, see, that's what you do in those moments. When you're tempted to take revenge, the bird of revenge is flying over your head, the flocks of revenge, you can choose not to act on it, and you can surrender that person to Jesus and surrender that situation to Jesus and say, God, I'm going to let you deal with them instead of me dealing with them. That's how we can do that. When you're tempted to let your feelings control you throughout the day, and the feelings, the birds of feelings are just flying all over you, and you're tempted to be led in that way, you can choose not to let them make that nest in your head. Instead, you can make decisions based on obedience to God instead of what you feel in the moment. When you're tempted to gossip birds are flying over your head, you're tempted to do that. Don't let them build a nest of gossip. Instead, you can choose to speak well of that person, and you can choose to speak well of those organizations. You can choose to speak, you see what I'm saying? Okay, we make different decisions. See, you are not alone in the temptations that you face. The temptations themselves, they're not sin. That's not the sin. It's giving into the temptations that makes it a sin. Remember, it's God who is bigger than the temptations, the trials, and the tests that we face, and He does not leave us alone in that battle. Okay, so the first way we navigate the trials, temptations, and tests is to not be overconfident. The second way we navigate it is to know that you're not alone. The third way we can navigate temptations, trials, and tests, number 3, realize that you can actually handle this. Realize you can handle it. Verse 13, the second part of that verse says, God, He will not allow you to be tempted. He will not allow the temptation, to be more than you can stand. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. Now, so the temptations, the tests and trials we face are bigger, but they're big, but God is the one who is bigger. So you're not doomed to fail, you're not doomed to fall, and you are not doomed to fail. So you got to understand this. God has made a divine commitment to you. Okay, He's committed to you. The temptations, the tests, and the trials that you face are not beyond what you can handle. Why? Because God is the one who's on your side. He's on your side. Now, He's not talking about situations and circumstances that you would put yourself in out of blatant disobedience to God and His Word, or when you make an intentionally poor, premeditated decision. Example, like if you've struggled with substance abuse and you say, well, I'm going to still go to that party and hang out with those people who are going to be using. All because God said He will not allow me to be tempted beyond what I can stand. That is not smart. That is not what He's talking about. That is unwise. That's not what you should do. Or if you struggled with eating sweets as a form of escape, or maybe your relationship with food has been very unhealthy, so you decide, I'm going to hang out at Dunkin' Donuts. All because God says He will not allow me to be tempted beyond what I can stand. That's not what He's talking about. Okay? No. You got to make different decisions than that. What He's saying is that when the birds fly over your head to lie, to cheat, to gossip, to harbor bitterness, to retaliate, right? To respond to a post on social media that you need to stay out of. Come on now. To compromise your standards, to say something you'll regret, to respond out of anger instead of love, to sleep in instead of going to church. You know how those birds are. Okay? Those moments, He's saying, they're not more than you can handle. It's not more than you can handle. Oh, it feels like it. Oh, the trial you're going through. Boy, it certainly seems that way. Or the ongoing temptation that seems to pull you like a magnet. The things that are really testing your faith. Oh, it feels like it's too much for you to handle. But God is saying, I have given you the strength to make it through. Okay? It doesn't have to defeat you because He has already defeated it for you. That's what He's saying. But what happens is we often listen to the voices and the lies that tell us, oh, it's just too much for us to handle, and we give in or we accept defeat because it feels like it's too much, it looks like it's too much, it's too daunting, it's overwhelming. you need to know that you're capable of more. You got to know you're capable of more today. Why? Because God is on your side. That's why you're capable of more. I remember Craig Rochelle, he tells a story about when he was a kid. He went to family camp, and family camp is when, like parents and kids or grandparents and grandkids, they all go to, this camp experience together. So you have adults and kids in this large experience, maybe over the course of a week. And one of the gentlemen that was at this camp, he met him at the swimming pool one day, and the man said to Craig, he said, I bet you can't hold your breath for 60 seconds or for 1 minute. Well, Craig took it as a challenge. He likes challenges. And so he said, get your watch out. I'm going to do this thing. So he went under the water, was holding his breath. And at about 30 seconds, Craig could hear this guy say, hey, you're at 30 seconds. Craig thought, this is bad. Because now it's going up on 35 seconds, and I feel like I might die. And at 40 seconds, he said he started to confess his sins, just in case. Then about 50 seconds or so, he said his life was flashing before his eyes. And at 55 seconds, he felt his lungs, they felt like they were going to collapse, and he was almost going to black out. And then at 61 seconds, he exploded out of the water, held his hands up in the air. Victory, he did it. He was so excited. Then this guy looked at him, and he said, I bet this time you can hold your breath for double the amount of time. Craig thought, I almost died at 1 minute. And now you expect me to do double? Like, what's your problem? Now, what Craig didn't know is that this guy was an executive coach for CEOs. And so he would do different things like this to coach people. And so this guy began to coach Craig on his breathing techniques. So he was coaching him. Then he talked about being still in the water, among a number of other things that he wanted Craig to implement this second time around. So Craig went under the water, and he tried to get double the time, holding his breath, putting all these coaching techniques into place that this guy just taught him. So he's practicing everything he just learned. And then when the guy yelled out 30 seconds, he had been under there 30 seconds, he had actually been under there 45 seconds. And then when the guy called out 1 minute, he had actually been under there 1 minute, 30 seconds. And when Craig finally came up for air, he had held his breath 2 minutes and 45 seconds. That's more than double what he did the first time. You see, he was capable of far more than what he realized. He was capable of far more. You need to know you are capable of more than what you realize. You are capable of making it through that trial. You are capable of standing strong against that temptation. You are capable of seeing the victory through that time of testing. You're capable. Why? Because you have someone better than that executive coach on your side, and his name is Jesus. Okay? He's your executive coach, and he's on your side, and that's how you can make it through. That's why you are capable today. Okay? Not because of yourself, but because of him. And because of him, you are not doomed to fall, and you are not doomed to failure. God has made a divine commitment to you. You can handle it because he is on your side. He's releasing supernatural strength in your life to help you do what you cannot do on your own. Remember, God is bigger than the temptations and the trials and the tests that we face. He is the reason that you can handle it. The temptations, the tests, and trials we face, they're big, but God's bigger. Okay, so the first way we navigate those things is we're not to be overconfident. The second way we navigate is we know that we're not alone. The third way we navigate, we realize you can handle it. And then the fourth and the final way we can navigate temptations, trials, and tests that come our way. Number 4, we find the way out. So we got to find the way out. The last part of 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, when you are tempted, notice he didn't say, well, if every now and then when you're tempted. Like you're going to be tempted. It's going to happen. When you're tempted, he will show you a way out so that you can endure. We are promised a way out of the temptations, trials, and tests that come our way. The phrase way out is almost the same word as exodus. There was an exodus of the Israelites from their 400 years of slavery to the Egyptians. God miraculously brought them out. And that event symbolized the exodus or escape that Jesus would provide for our sins through his death and resurrection from the dead. So what Paul is saying is that not only can you handle what comes your way, okay, but Jesus has also provided you an exodus. Jesus has provided you an escape, a way out of the temptations and the trials and the tests that come your way. Isn't that good news? It's amazing. I don't know about you, but I've had one of those crazy dreams before where I'm standing in the middle of a room and the room kind of just starts to shrink in on me and it has no doors to get out. There's no exits and I'm stuck and it feels impossible in that moment. And then there's this panic-stricken feeling that comes over me. My heart starts to race. My mind starts to race. My blood pressure probably starts to rise. My emotions are on edge. And then I wake up, and I realize I was in a deep sleep, and then I'm glad that it was only a dream. But that's how we feel sometimes about trying to find a way out of the temptations and trials and tests that come our way. Maybe you're there right now. What do you do? How do you get out of this thing? Let me tell you that God will not allow you to be stuck in a room with no exits, no ways out of the temptations, the trials, the tests that you face. You may feel like it, you may think that, it may appear like that's the case with your natural eyes, but there will always be at least one door of escape. God promises that for you, and you got to hang on to that. Now there's two words that almost seem contradictory in this verse of Scripture that we're looking at here. The phrase way out and the word endure. So it's not one or the other, but it's both. So there is a way out, and sometimes you might need to endure temptation there. And the enduring can sometimes feel like there's no way out. Ever been there before? But we can't allow our mind to play tricks on us like that. I like the way Gordon Fee, who is a great theologian, I like the way he described it. He said, sometimes we need long obedience in the same direction. Long obedience in the same direction. See, that's what endurance looks like at times. Continuing to obey God and doing the things He wants us to do in the middle of the challenges, of the temptations, of the trials, and the tests that come our way. Sometimes we have to endure to find the way out. Sometimes endurance actually is the way out. So we need to be faithful to endure, and as we do, it can lead to our way out. And if that's where you find yourself, remember that God is giving you supernatural strength to endure. And you will become exponentially stronger as you endure and you don't give up. Sometimes God will supernaturally provide a way out for you. That's the option I love. How many of you love it when He just supernaturally provides a way out? Well, that's me. I just love that when that happens. But you know, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it takes self-discipline on our part to look for the way out right in the middle of the temptation or the trial or the testing that we're going through. And the way out doesn't always come in this shiny, nice package or this preferred method that we always want it to come. It's not the way it works. So we got to keep our eyes open. Sometimes the way out is in the form of staying away from certain people in certain places. Sometimes that is the way out. Yeah, wise choices, huh? Sometimes the way out is choosing the right relationships and friendships that will build us up and not tear us down. Sometimes that is the way out. Sometimes it's ending a relationship that we need to end rather than continuing to stay in it. Sometimes that is the way out. Sometimes the way out is creating the atmosphere and the right environments around your life. Did you know you can create a Holy Spirit atmosphere by what you listen to? YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, your entertainment, podcasts, radio. You can create a certain atmosphere around your life, and sometimes the atmosphere needs to be created. That's your way out. Sometimes your way out is accountability. It's finding the right person or the right people to help you through something that is challenging, to help keep you on track. Sometimes your way out is to choose to be in a connect group. One of our small groups that we offer here at Reach Church. Oh, so many people think, oh, I don't really need one of those. You don't think you need it until you need it. Just saying. That when we need one, we don't have those people in our lives because we've chosen not to involve ourselves in those relationships at an earlier time. But sometimes that's your way out. Sometimes your way out is spiritual warfare. That's a fancy word. What in the world does that mean? It means taking God's word, really, and declaring the truth of Scripture over your life. Not just accepting what is. So sometimes that means you say things and you declare statements like, greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world. Sometimes it means saying, I have the victory through Jesus Christ. I'm the head and I'm not the tail. I'm above and I'm not beneath, even though it doesn't seem like it right now in this situation. It means saying things like, you know what? I believe my God is a God of the turnaround. He's going to turn things around for me. It means saying, I'm going to choose to align myself with God's word and think on things above, not on things of the earth. It means by saying, I choose to believe what God says about me instead of what I'm thinking about at this moment. I choose to believe what God says about me instead of what other people are saying about me. Sometimes it means I'm going to claim what is available to me because of the blood of Jesus that he shed at the cross, and doing spiritual warfare and saying, I claim victory because of the blood that Jesus shed. It means saying my victory is, his victory is my victory because of what he did. It means saying he has already defeated the enemy through his blood. Sometimes your way out is spiritual warfare, saying those kind of things. And sometimes your way out is a combination of several of all those things at the same time. But we need to understand that the way out doesn't just automatically happen. We have to go get it. We're not just wait, well, I just, kind of stand here and just wait around, and the way out, it'll